I was thinking about the arguments that happen online, like the man and woman debate and all the different stupid debates that happen on maybe like TikTok and like any of them. Like I honestly hate them. Like anytime that thing turns on, I just want to turn it off. But I thought, why are people so fixated on their own opinion and point of view? And I know sometimes the stuff being said over the internet is just BS and rage bait, but for the ones that aren't, why do they not see the other person's point of view and acknowledge it in terms of any idea or problem? And that is what I wanted to discuss because I thought I would be able to get an answer from this. First of all, we need to know the meaning of perspective. It shows how you see a situation based on your life. Another one could be how you see a problem or an idea, or like the best way I thought it was put, your past shapes your current thoughts. This can sum up the human experience because that is how humans grow. However, this can lead to biases and stereotypes that will not always fit the group of people they are labeling towards, which can lead to conflicts that we have seen many times before in history. I think a simple example I can give from my like personal experience is when I went to private school and how I was being treated as a black person. This was more known in like year 9, but I joined the private school in year 7 when some people from different races would tell me to maybe get braids, to get dreads, to get locks, and maybe that joking that I was maybe a drug dealer or YN, which didn't really give much offense to me per se. But I was very curious why they thought of me in that way. And this it was the main reason because I was a very quiet, nice individual and I had a bunch of friends. So for them to view me in that sort of way as my friends was kind of crazy. But then when I asked them, it was like they'd maybe seen it like maybe on the streets where people look cool in them or the artist or maybe there's something they've seen online. Most of the time it's online. But yeah, it's crazy because they try to put me in that box of that specific archetype that they thought a black person was, even though a black person or anyone could be anything, in my opinion. So for that stereotype it's crazy. But what I will say is that there's no perfect perspective on life or situation, even if you are trying to be a righteous person or like some that thinks that they're above everyone else, and you have different views or on a situation, which I sometimes do in situations where I'll try and put pieces together and stuff, try and be like what would I say, like a pacifist or like just trying to stop the violence and think of something greater, that sort of thing. But then, are you gonna look at both sides when there's a pedo involved doing a crime against a youngin, or someone that does a mass shooting based on like their beliefs that they think is right? I would hope not. So then that makes you set biases on certain topics, right? So then you can't be a progressive, righteous person, which is scary to think about. So in arguments or discussions, you have to have a bias, but you should have a bias at the same time when it's socially acceptable. So then that can bring it into all the online BS. And the reason that it's there is because it is socially acceptable to maybe hate on women or to hate on a man for that specific topic and many other topics where it's socially acceptable. But watch something be like a creep out of the socially acceptable line and for someone to say something out of pocket that majority actually agree on, but then it's not socially acceptable to say, so it gets ridiculed. And most of the time it may just be for clickbait, it may just be for the views, but you see it a lot of the time where people will do that sort of thing and they'll actually mean it, but then people will hate on it even though most of the time they also agree on it. And that kind of comes from herd mentality in a way that we see a lot of the time on the internet. I think probably you may have heard of it. And I do the same thing where, let's say you would see a video and you may have a viewpoint on it, but then you go to the comments and all the people are now against your viewpoint. Now you are siding with their viewpoint because now the comments are there and they're against your viewpoint and you just want to go with the herd. That's what you see so many times, like so many times. So it's something that I feel like people just need to have their own values, their own self, instead of trying to just be amongst everyone else. But another scenario I could give is when, like a classic scenario, let's say there's a white girl that's walking late at night, but then she's scared because she's out late at night. But then she sees a male, any race of a male, behind her. From this, some people could infer that she may be racist because the guy may just be minding his business and is minding his business and may be also scared because he's walking late at night. And let's say she takes this to social media and people ridicule her for this girl because they may view her as being racist. But little do they know she has had several encounters with different males, maybe the same race or different races, that have done unkind things to her, has said mean things to her, or have done mean things to her. And then she feels the type of way about maybe the man or the certain race or like the whole thing in general, which can lead to what I stated before of your past shapes your current thoughts. However, I will say that all because all of those things happened to that lady doesn't mean that she should hate all men or she should be racist towards that certain group. However, you should maybe understand why she may think that way towards that certain group because you don't have to agree with it, but you may just understand why they do. And most of the time, it wouldn't even affect the individual themselves. And it wouldn't even affect the group that they are part of, whether that be the white community or the black community or the Mexican community, any community. It may not even affect them, but then they feel hurt because they may not like their group, even though who really cares? And then in general, you shouldn't even be racist or be prejudiced to anyone in general. So people that do have those bad pasts and think that's justified to then be racist and prejudiced, that is wrong. Because you shouldn't do that at all. One thing I will say is that I also did some of my a bit of my own research in terms of how certain maybe corporations or groups have changed the current thoughts of a larger population. And we can see this in the 1970s to like maybe 1980s for large oil companies in terms of knowing about global warming before global warming was even a thing, in terms of their own studies or just in general. And they didn't openly talk about it because they knew that this would probably affect their profits in terms of maybe government regulating them even more. So they decided to pay a bunch of PR teams, researchers, think tanks to try and skew the idea of big corporations affecting the world instead of it was the individual you and me lifestyle, our lifestyle that was the problem, which is crazy to think about. Your past shapes your current thoughts. Your past shapes your current thoughts. That's what they basically did. They changed and they skewed it. They manipulated it. They skewed so many people's minds back then, which maybe would leave us in a better state at the moment. But going back to what I said before in terms of my question, I would probably say that the whole thing is cooked. I'll be real. Like I really can't be I can't be bothered to understand the influencer TikToker's mind in terms of just spewing out slop all the time. And I guess most of the time it's just for money, which meh, I can understand. But yeah, in general, perspective, double-edged sword, man. You can have a good side, having a positive aspect to the world's views, looking at all the light, and you could look at the world in a much better way and be grateful. I always say this, always be grateful even when you have little, and to just always be grateful. But then at the back end, you could always be negative. You could always have a fixed mindset in a way. Even if, let's say, you're trying to start out something new, you decide that you're not going to continue or pursue it all because it's a little bit hard. And it's really hard to, I would say, go with that growth mindset. But it's something my school always said all the time, and it's really weird me explaining it now, but it's true, and it's a very good attribute to have. I feel like, but yeah, in general, just be on the good side of the blade. Yeah, peace and love.